This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, thanks for being here today. Don, I'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to be talking about robotic process automation, or RPA, solutions today, and really focusing on the Kofax intelligent automation platform and RPA specifically. ImageTech, as you know, is a full-service content management systems integrator. Do a lot with RPA, workflow, forms, e-signature solutions, and things like that. So we want to get quickly to the demos. I'm just going to show you one slide on intelligent automation platforms, and then move towards RPA use cases, or what we call robots, and the two demonstrations that we have here for you. So when we say intelligent automation platform, this is really what we mean. We think about it as being a fully integrated set of products from a single vendor that provides capture, BPM, analytics, as well as mobile and document generation, and then in the top left there, RPA. Kofax has the best intelligent automation platform that we've seen, and it really maps to all those same capabilities. It's worth noting that RPA is most often not the entire solution. It's typically part of the solution and serves to fill the gaps in an overall process. It's kind of like a sub-process to an overall process that might be invoice processing or claims processing. And it's really suited for doing things like retrieving information, moving data from point A to point B, checking and sending emails, and things like that. Where RPA really fits, and you'll see this in the demo, is filling those gaps in a fully automated process. Maybe it's because we have disconnected systems or legacy systems that don't offer an API, and that's really where RPA shines. But it does work best in areas where the process is repeatable and predictable. So with that, Don, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can start sharing yours and go ahead through demo 1, if you would. Made you an organizer, so you should be able to start your own screen.
All right, thanks, John. Yes, so the first scenario here that I'm going to walk us through is where I am a user in the accounts payable department, and part of my daily duties are to process incoming emails from vendors. The demo we're going to show is specific to invoices, but I need to process those invoices or any other documents that might come in, and that can tend to be kind of a time-consuming and error-prone process. So what I'm going to showcase here is our solution, a robotic process that kind of focuses on the, as John had mentioned, the repeatable, predictable tasks surrounding those procedures. So what we'll see is that the robot is configured to automatically, for me, monitor a given inbox for incoming emails that have attachments. And then for every attachment, the robot is going to submit the document, the attachment, to a transformation service where all the pertinent information is extracted from that document. Again, this is invoices, so we'll be pulling things like invoice date, invoice number, PO number, vendor information, and the likes. And another feature, what the robot will also do is determine whether or not all these pre-configured validation rules have been satisfied. Is this invoice valid? If it's not, it needs to get me back involved in the process to say, hey, something's not right here. Maybe the information that was extracted isn't confident, or hey, this isn't a valid vendor. It brings me back into that process to complete the validation, maybe some data correction or verification. Once the data is verified, our robot then passes all of that information off to a back-end ERP system. So if I flip over to my email, I can see in my inbox I have an invoice from Tech Data. and here's the attachment, and maybe the current process that I go through. I would imagine I have to download the invoice, open it, perhaps kind of take a look at it, do some searches in some external systems, maybe upload this invoice to content management system, copy it out to the network, any number of tasks. But in this case, all I need to do is route this to the mailbox that our robot is kind of polling. So what's happening behind the scenes here is our robot has logged into our mail server, in this case Microsoft Exchange, and again it's looking at that monitored inbox, grabbing the emails, grabbing the attachments, and kind of initiating and managing that document transformation process. Again, I referenced this earlier, but we're doing data extraction, pulling invoice number, invoice date, and the likes. Some external lookups. So for invoices, a typical example is it's going to kind of locate an address and say, this is the vendor address, go find the appropriate vendor from some sort of back-end database. And if it's not valid, mark the invoice is not valid, or maybe the invoice date is in the future. It's those types of things, validation rules and lookups that the robot's doing for that task of validation. And of course, if it determines that there's anything not valid, that invoice gets flagged for me to take a second look at. So this robot, for our demo, it actually sends an email with a link. And if I flip back over to my email, by now I should have, yes, I have my email from our robot that says an invoice was submitted for transformation, user validation required. So you recently submitted this invoice, but needs a little help. So if I click this link, I can log into the RPA validation, and a whole lot going on in here, but we'll kind of just briefly touch on what we see, which is, of course, the invoice here. The vendor information is here along with the invoice number, invoice date, and anything in red is what the robot has decided it needs me to validate. In this case, it wants me to validate the vendor, that it's tech data, it certainly is, and our invoice date is not confidently extracted. Looks like the 2 is a little fuzzy. So I would need to validate this field as well. But before I do that, just quickly want to show we're also extracting all the line items from the invoice. So things like the quantity, the price, etc. And another common use case for this type of validation rule is for all the line items, the totals for each need to match the total printed on the invoice itself. So we can see some total fields here, and we have some validation rules behind the math there to make sure everything lines up. Everything's green, so we're good on that front. So if I just validate my invoice date here, close the batch, we now have a valid invoice that is ready to be kind of updated, sent to the line of business system. And if I flip over here, what we'll see is all of that data is going to be transferred into our ERP system. And in our case, it's this Customer 360 application. So it logs in, and we'll see the PO information, customer information come across along with all of the line data. So all those line items that I showed you prior, all of that information is getting moved across into the system. Now, we did the line of business update using this particular method just to show that, Kofax, the RPA, the robot can interact with desktop applications if it needs to. We'll see in the next demo, we'll be kind of interacting with web pages. But here, we wanted to show that basically any desktop application that you have, it can work with. And where that comes into play, a lot of times, if you're updating some sort of external system, it'll have an upload capability where maybe you can hand it XML data and it will, it can ingest that. But in our case here, Customer 360 is maybe a legacy app that doesn't have that ability or doesn't have an API to integrate directly with. So this is a great use case for that type of scenario where, the information can be just entered into the system automatically. So quick summary, sorry, John, but great use cases for RPA with the email integration and processing, data extraction, getting the user back involved to validate when necessary, and then of course, doing something with that data that's all been collected and validated, in this case, kind of sent to a third-party application.
Excellent. Great.
So for the second demo, give me a second to flip over here. Another great use case for RPA is working with web pages. So initiating searches, getting those results, collecting all the information from the search results, and then doing something with those with that data. In this case, we're on the FracFocus website where basically this is a search for a well, and it'll kind of give you all the information about the chemical composition of the hydraulic fluids that were used. But the idea here is, if this is something I do frequently, maybe I need to kind of search for a given job date on or after a certain date. We'll pick let's see, we'll go to the 4th, and we'll do a search. So I need to locate information about all these wells and all the hydraulic fracking, chemical composition information for each one of these. And what we see here is I've got a whole list of wells, of sites with some information. We've got an identifier, some job start dates, a bunch of high-level information, and we have multiple pages of this. So also, very important, each one of these line items as well, each one of these wells has an attached PDF. So if my task was to collect information about, kind of compile these search results, well, this site doesn't give me a nice way to download this information. So you'd be looking at copying, pasting information into some sort of external file. So what our robot is doing, I actually submitted it prior to the demo just so that it could finish while we're doing this, but I gave it a date, gave the robot a date of 3/4/2020, and it went out and is doing exactly what I'm showing you here. It initiated the search, it's collecting all this information, and then for each PDF, it's actually opening the PDF and collecting more information. So it's collecting some additional well info like latitude, longitude, some other this other header data up here, but it's also collecting all of these line items, all of these are chemical composition of the fluid. So you can imagine that would be quite a lengthy task if indeed this was something I was tasked with doing, is collecting all this information. So if I flip over to my email again, I did this prior, but the robot, once it finished, has saved all this information into an Excel file and sent me an email. And we'll see a multi-tabbed Excel sheet here, the first tab being effectively that first page of search results with some additional information collected from the PDF. So we have all these kind of high-level search results, and then each one of these tabs represents the data inside of the PDF. So all those chemicals, everything has been, all that information has been collected and saved into this Excel file. I will say that you'll notice my list of here is a bit shorter than the actual search results. That's because we have, we're actually collecting every 5th search result just to make it more efficient for a demo. But again, great use case for RPA. You didn't see it here, but there's a I initiated the robot. There's a real simple page where I just gave it the date and told it to go do its thing, and it came back with all these results. So if this is something I have to do frequently, it's a huge time saver. So well, that's the end of the demo, John. I don't know if you can
Great.
take it.
Yeah, definitely looks time saving. Great use cases for RPA, and thanks for the demo, Don.
Got it.